thing's having a hard time communicating.
Oh, it's got to reboot.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah, this isn't even on.
Got a hot mic.
Can't turn it on?
Rising mic.
It's probably gonna take a little bit of time.
I gotta go home, man, in 10 minutes.
What'd you say? You gotta go home, Jack?
Gotta go home. I got
Kara?
Hey, how are you?
people
I'm
to
all
see,
right.
things to do. Things to do, people to see.
Hey, remember on council, we used to spend all day there.
They fetch you twice.
Huh?
They fetch you twice.
It's a negative
That's what it sounds like.
Oh, man.
Hey, Lance.
Yeah.
I'm calling Margaret. You think she should just send out a new meeting?
I mean, technically, everybody could join the same one again.
Hey, I've got the meeting up and running. I wonder if people are able to rejoin, or if we need to send out a new meeting.
Or we just do it, next time.
IT
Darn,
equipment.
can't make the connection. That's okay, we can do it the next time. Thank you very much.
Test.
Mics
test,
are on.
Test. 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 Test.
Phones are blank and her computer's down.
I'll go check on her.
Okay, IT's on the way.
You know, Tyner, you need to be careful when you're on your little Zoom when you show Margaret. Because the last meeting, I got so entertained by you and her when you were sitting down there. If you could have just seen, at one point, you were just showing from here down.
I don't know, you,
Sitting there fixing your hair. And she walks in and she doesn't know she's on there. And she's going down the hall and she flings her jacket over her shoulder. It's just, it was hard not to laugh. You might want to warn her if you're on there.
Okay.
this is Commissioner Jack. Somebody send me a message.
Joe, your mic's on.
How you doing?
Joe. Mic's on. Your mic's on.
Hold on.
Yeah, we're broadcasting.
Yes, we've got TV and web. We're waiting on the closed captioners.
Okay, what can I help you with? You were asking me a question.
Test. 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 Test.
This is actually the city, and we did explain to them intermittent because I'm missing, and they still haven't fixed it. Intermittent.
Makes us look stupid.
Okay. See if I can send Mike over there. I'm looking at this intercom deal. It looks like
That was correct. That was correct.
anymore, so it can't update the
Caption's right.
Makes us
I'll
look
send
like
Mike over
people
there.
still. Yeah. Your back hurting, Brent?
Yeah, if I sit too long, it
Yeah.
tightens up on this.
You need a muscle relaxer.
Yeah, if I take those and I get too drowsy.
I know.
I take any like that night.
Boy, they work.
Gotta get down to it.
That's good to know before a vote.
What do you need to do? What? Important vote, you're right.
Are you using a laptop?
Are we not going to have
Testing. You, you can't turn them off from here?
Not right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let me grab another water. No, it's getting hot. Yeah, but it should.
Still can't turn it off.
Off?
Okay, I'll be right back. We don't have an option for that. That has nothing to do with us. You look nice today, Tyra. That girlfriend picked that out for you?
Kind of. She, she was working in Rockport and, worked at the country club and they pretty much shut down. And, she didn't have any, I think golf is open, but that's about all. But she was in the, food and beverage service. And, so several days before the governor did his first order, she was talking to me on the phone in a real nice way and for about 30 minutes, and then it clicked, and I said, "Are you suggesting that I move in with
What's
me?"
going on here?
And she goes, "Ding, ding, ding, ding." So we, because she was not going to be able to pay rent and stuff like that, and so I mean, it was actually, good timing because she was all pretty much moved in before, things, yeah, before everything happened. And she, I have an old house, got a lot of built-ins and stuff like that. And she started cleaning things up, straightening things up, and, oh yeah, no,
Some of them.
no, she, about 2 nights ago, she sat me down on the bed and made me go through my entire closet. Are you really gonna wear this ever?
Sorry. For anyone that's in the hallway, we're getting ready to start again. They've told me that our technology is up and closed captions working. I'm doing a test. Test. Okay, thank you, Tyner. Everybody's here. Can you ask the clerk would you ask the clerk to come in, that we're ready? Maggie, would you see if the clerk is in the hallway? Oh my gosh.
There's one.
Hey, forget the hallway. I'm sorry. You were hiding there. Let's go ahead and go back on the record. I just want to make note for technology purposes. I realize the mic is on, but my box is off, just for whoever's listening to me. My box is not working, but I will manage from here, okay? So we didn't really ever gavel out. We had a power outage for those of you at home, and it was AEP had some sort of a issue, and I guess 30 minutes later, we're back on the record at 3:23 p.m., and thanks for coming back and not leaving us, Johnny. We were in the middle of questions, to be honest with you, and I'm gonna have to ask for someone to help me remember. I know, but do you remember the question? Or?
I hadn't asked him yet.
Oh, good. If you don't mind, we're gonna go back to questions. Okay, Commissioner Vaughn.
I'm hoping I remember what it was.
Something stuck out to me that you said the hospital said, that unless they wanted more, if they come back and want more, I guess when you're visiting with the hospital, if they're gonna do this,
Well, let me clarify that if I said it that way.
you probably used other words, it's been a while.
Okay, what I meant was Spawn asked for more, and they gave us a list. And I don't know how I can say this nicely, but, you know, an event never goes unused. And so basically, they periodically come and talk to us about changes they'd like to make to the agreement. And coincidentally, they presented their annual list, if you will, of things they want to see at the agreement at the same time this came up. And so it's not the providers that Spawn.
That
On,
doesn't
on a
sound very-
completely different, yeah, that's a completely different
On a-
issue.
And that's why I want to say it's a
timing-
recurring, it's
Right,
a recurring thing.
A recurring issue, recurring theme, and it has to do with moving, behavioral health out of there because of the demolition and what their issues or needs would be. So you remember how he told you that behavioral health, sorry, there's a terrible fly here.
They lease it and they,
And they've been on the 7th floor for a long time. And what we all know, and quite frankly, everybody in the behavioral health space understands, is that they need a new home. They can't be there because it's slated for demolition. So what Johnny's saying is that they're also talking to them simultaneously about that contract, which is between hospital district and them exclusively. There is another subcontractor, but only Spawn controls that. That's Spawn with CIBH.
okay, well, let me ask you this since you said that. CIBH, why are they contracted with Spawn? Could they not contract with you guys? Because aren't they a third party? Could they not contract with the hospital district?
They are contracted with Spawn. Under our agreement, Commissioner, Spawn has a responsibility to take care of all the indigent, including the ones with mental health. And Spawn has chosen not to do that themselves directly, but they hired a contractor to do that for them.
But Mrs. Vaughn, are you asking, because you're onto something here.
I'm asking.
Can you ask it again? Yeah.
I don't know what they're asking you guys. I have no idea, but it sounds like they don't really want to be in the psychiatric business. I don't know that. I'm just surmising.
You're correct.
But if they, I don't know how long the contract is. When it comes up, could you guys not contract with them instead of Spawn?
Commissioner, we can. Historically, the district has not wanted to carve out services from our agreement. Now, we can, but we haven't. So here's the example is, once you open the door for carving out services, if Spawn comes back to us and say, and this is not a good example, but it's an example, if they come back in 3 years and say, Johnny, we want to carve out obstetrics. We don't want to do obstetrics anymore. We want to do that something else. So then it sets a pattern of them picking and choosing which services and stuff they want to provide under our agreement. And so to the degree that we start to carve out services from our agreement, those are obligations the district would start to assume. And while we have reserves, we could sustain them for a while, but I'm going to be back over here saying, remember back when? We did
Yeah.
this and we did that and we,
And this is
They make money on
where,
some things, they lose money on other things, and it's an offset, but if they give us all the losers back, then.
Yeah,
well, the only
so
difference.
we're not amenable to, at least not right now,
it's just a question.
carving out services. So mental health, I will tell you, is on the horizon because it's a community-wide problem. The indigents we have in our program share the same problems that people in the community have in terms of mental health needs and stuff. So somewhere out there, there might be a situation where we can put the two things together, get the hospital districts, mental health patients taken care of, and try to address some things in the community.
And that's the hope.
And that's the hope, but we're not there yet. And the hospital district is resistant to using contractual negotiations at this time to force that issue. We're amenable to talking about it in the future because we know it's coming. And maybe we can give Spawn some light at the end of the tunnel that maybe it might be something we could step away from in this case in order to benefit the community overall, but we're not there yet.
And we don't have the time today, but I will say we need to have a conversation about the unfunded mandate of behavioral health, because when you look at a hospital district and the way it's designed statutorily, it talks about the health of its citizens and specifically the indigent care health. But Johnny and I have kind of debated whether or not behavioral health is under his wings completely, or is that ours at the county? And we still never really got the answer to that, but what I will tell you, what the legislators who wrote it said, they said, hey, behavioral health overall should be in your hospital district. And right now, the way we've been operating is just indigent care is in our, so if you're behavioral health and indigent care, you're gonna fall under the hospital district. But what's happening right now at Memorial is you have both, private pay and indigent. And so what the reason it's important to address, and the only thing I disagree, and Johnny knows this, the only thing I disagree with him on is that this is not just now. It's been coming and brewing and festering forever. And I thought I was managing it pretty well until about a week ago. Because what we did was we said, we want to get the Meadows Mental Health Institute to give us the parameters of what the heck, how do I know what to do if I don't understand the problem? And so you'll remember we all got together, and even though they hired them, we all decided that behavioral health was a county problem, not necessarily an indigent problem. Then we took the same piece with criminal justice, and we created that Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to work with the law enforcement to say, okay, now we know that there's an additional problem besides all the other issues, the behavioral health. There's a special problem inside our criminal justice system, which is that our jail is our biggest psychiatric facility. So when we get to these issues, they are complex, but you ask the right question instinctively, and he answered you, but they don't like to talk about this. But the answer is, of course they can do it. They can do anything they want to do contractually. But it's their decision, and that's important to respect. But they've been hanging their hats on this idea, sorry, as they say, sorry you opened the can of worms. It's important to hear. Y'all have been operating under this, I shouldn't act like you're not in the room. Y'all have been operating for years under this idea that I have a contractual obligation. So that's it, you follow it, that's what you need to do. And what I've been trying to open everybody's mind to is the concept of, why don't you start thinking about what new agreements you can do if that means it's in the best interest of your community? And that's where the behavioral health of the overall community, and to his credit, Johnny's staff and board, both boards, the old board and the new board, said, let's bring in the experts so that we can get the data. And sadly, COVID is interrupted, but we're still getting the data. I think they're still working hard, right, Johnny? The Meadows folks, they've been contacting us
Yep.
throughout COVID.
Judge, and I think that there's an intersection somewhere here soon between what we do, what the county needs, and mental health. I mean, it has a lot of tentacles, Commissioner. I mean, it's the jail, it's the diversion stuff that needs to happen. It has a bunch of pieces to it, and the district is committed to doing that. We'd like to kind of think through how all that should work and get, as the judge said, have some help to help us guide how all that stuff could work. And maybe it's a time to pull that out of the contract at that time, because we need a community-wide thing and not just one that's focused on the indigent. But let me just add one more thing that may help clarify. The unit at Memorial is basically the housing where SPAWN carries out its duties to take care of the indigent mental health. But in that unit, they take care of more than the indigent. They take care of insured patients, they take care of uninsured patients and stuff like that. That SPAWN decision, that's not one the district forced on them, but they elected to go ahead and do that. And under our agreement, as long as they take care of the indigent, they can do all this other stuff they want to do. So the confusion starts to be that if the unit leaves Memorial, gets relocated somewhere else, is the district going to take care of all the psych patients that go or whatever with it? And the answer is, we're going to take care of the indigent. If SPAWN wants to add more patients to it, and that be an insured patients, Medicare, Medicaid, uninsured, whatever, they can do that. But the confusion is because, one, it's situated at a building we own. They do the service at a building we own. And the contractor they have has chosen, and SPAWN has worked with them in taking more than our patients. And that's okay, because it probably offsets, costs and does other stuff that then it benefits the community. But I don't know in the future that SPAWN's going to be willing to take on more than our indigent. And so when they stop doing that, then we're down to one provider, I guess, judge in the community, HCA.
One provider who doesn't want to do it either. That's where, as they say, be careful what you wish for. You tell everybody 10 million times, this is your contract, you eat it, because you did it, then don't be surprised when they come back at you and say, you know what? I call it. You're absolutely right. I'll just do exactly what that contract has done, even though for years and years and years, we've been the beneficiaries of creating both a hospital for private pay, private insurance, and indigent care. This is a whole nother workshop, but I'm glad you opened it up because there is so much to discuss, but behavioral health is our duty, no doubt about it. The question is whose financial responsibility it is, and I'm just gonna have to get back to you because I don't know. Laura, you would probably like go, please don't give me another headache before November. But the headache really is not a headache. It's just understanding, going back to the health and safety code. We had this fight in the legislature as to whose responsibility it is. And I think you're gonna find that it's gonna be the county's responsibility to deal with behavioral health.
That could
But the legislature defines under hospital districts that it goes that way, that you as a taxpayer, you pay your money. Why would you think that you weren't getting behavioral health inside your hospital district? And so we've got to work on that. But just as a final on the slippery slope argument, it's like going back to HIPAA. There's things that lawyers say that, and good advocates, and Johnny's a good advocate. They love to say it because it's just enough to get you to think about what we are afraid of. And we're afraid that if you start carving things out, it'll go down the line. But let me just say that there's a very clear delineation between behavioral health and the rest of healthcare. And nobody is confused as to what is a behavioral health diagnosis and what is a healthcare diagnosis. I am not concerned at all that you can contract your way to making sure that they could not carve out obstetrics, orthopedics, or anything else. Because it's super easy to understand what is behavioral health and what is healthcare. And I think that it's important to come to the table, which they have assured me that that's what they're doing. And so that's what needs to happen. And I don't see it, everyone sees it differently, but I don't see it as anybody doing anything but trying to make their way for the future, because that place isn't going to be part of the future, and behavioral health can't stay there, and we need more behavioral health services, not less. So why can't we just all kind of figure it out? And that's what I've pretty much said at every hospital board meeting in the last year is figure it out. And I think what Spawn said is you're taking too darn long, and while you're taking so long, we're losing a fortune. And that's the truth, because it is because COVID hit, but more importantly, because of the way those contracts were written, it did not assume any increase in healthcare cost. It was a stagnant amount since 2012. And like I said, we all have our things that we like. I happen to like this space a lot. So when I tell you that Johnny and I have had endless conversations about this, we have notebooks. Behavioral health is its own animal, but I want to hear two things. One, memorial is coming down, for sure. And two, behavioral health needs to be moved because it's in there. You can't have one without the other. So they got to figure it out. And I told them, what are you waiting for? You got to go now. You got to figure this out now. But I agree with you. There's no sense in rushing anything. But I also want you to know they've been at this tug of war for quite some time. And sometimes when the water's boiling is the best time to put in the pasta. And the water's boiling right now because we need to make decisions. And I think what you're seeing is the growing pains of making those decisions. You were right about one thing. It's obstetrics. We're giving birth to a new type of contract. But don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Get what you need to take care of the citizens for indigent care, and make certain that your partner, because that's what he is, either by contract or by business, is that can continue to provide that level of care that you expect. It's got to be good for both of you, not one of you, both of you. And I trust that you can do that. I know that you can. It's just a matter of will. Is that
That's fair, Judge.
I try to be fair with you, but I
Yeah.
disagree with a lot of things that, we've talked about. But I don't mind saying it's gotta be good for you, it's gotta be good for the district, I don't mean you, the collective you, and the district, because, but it's bigger than indigent care, Johnny. It's
And
definitely bigger.
Judge, I did say that there is an intersection. It's
You're
in the
right.
future, and it could be within the next year. We have put work into the meadow studies and stuff. I mean, we're doing stuff to gather information about what that might look like. So I think it's premature to force it in a contractual negotiation to say we're going to do it right now when we don't know what we're going to do yet. But I think the commitment is there and the recognition is there that the indigents have some of the same issues and stuff the general population has. So there probably is some argument for coalescing those two things and try to move forward with them together.
I agree.
I just don't know what that is right now.
I agree. Okay, guys, well,
Can I say something?
Johnny, sure, Commissioner.
You ready? You know, unfortunately, and I talked to Johnny about this way back there too. You know, and I think I was around when you were making the agreements with Spawn, the time that we started doing the Hector P. Garcia.
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna tell you now, I don't think that the HCA is gonna come up with anything. They're not, I don't think they're gonna be any kind of a partner in this thing.
Commissioner, I'm hypothetically speaking, but what I think we could hear from them is I already pay property taxes and we don't have a role in this.
I agree. And also the Children's District Hospital, I don't think they're gonna play a major role in this either. So unfortunately, they only leave Spawn. You know, and that means that Spawn would have to carry the whole brunt of the 45 beds.
If it goes forward, they would be carrying the load for at least one unit or more if they took more units. And so that was the premise that all the providers had in front of them, is if you come and use the unit, we'll put the money up to get the place ready, but you're gonna have to pay for your own personnel, your own equipment, and the state may be doing some of the equipment now. But at the end of the day, because they were gonna be doing their own billing and collection of those patients, all of that was their responsibility. The district can't do that because we don't have a provider number.
You know, and also you mentioned $3 million, but I guarantee you it'd probably be more than $3 million. Will y'all pick up the tab if it is $4 million?
Commissioner, the original number, and they're working to value engineer it, is 2.6, and there's a contingency on top of the 2.6, and we added another contingency. But I think we all have experience in situations where you get into a building that is of age, that once you get into it, there could be other things. And the problem that exists with Memorial is an example of, a great example of incremental construction. And so originally it was the building, but all the new additions and stuff that are tied to the infrastructure of the original building. And so when you get in there, you may run into something that it has to be addressed, and because it's all tied back to the same infrastructure, that work goes all the way back to the basement. I mean, that's where all the stuff is, there at Memorial, and so the potential is there. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, and we did, like I said, layer one contingency on top of another one to come to the 3, but it's possible.
And the other thing, you know, back then, the agreement that I understood way back then when we did it, the Hector P. Garcia, was the fact that Spawn agreed to 4 things, right? I mean, they were the lessees. The building was leased to Spawn. They were responsible to make sure everything in Memorial was operational.
Correct.
To Spawn, right?
Yes.
Because they were the lessees. Of course, they're subcontracted for the psych unit.
Correct. Commissioner, when we did the deal, there were, the latest arrangement that led to the construction of HPG, there were, as I recall, 4 major things. The Spawn's commitment to the district, and all of these are, presently backed up by an escrow agreement. And so the first commitment was they were going to construct a new tower at Shoreline. They've done that. They were going to move the trauma center. They've done that. They've moved the residency training programs over there. They've done that. And the fourth thing, well, in Hector P. Garcia wasn't on the escrow list, but the fourth thing was that they would demolish Memorial and convert it to a green space. So there's still money sitting in the escrow account right now. Today, this month, it was $5.9 million, and they're due to increase and add to that $1.3 million every year for the next 3 years as a financial incentive, if you will, to go ahead and make sure that Memorial's demolished.
Can that 5.9 million be used for the beds that are there so Spawn won't have to put any more money in?
Commissioner, the 5.9 million is there to assure that they delivered on all the series of things I just described, and they've delivered most of them. The last and final thing is if when Memorial comes down, they get their last payout. And that's how that worked. That was purposely put there to make sure that everything that they promised occurred. And so if they didn't, then there was some financial penalty. But I think there could be some kind of contractual talks where Spawn gets an early payout from the escrow conditioned upon them doing something else with it. I'm hesitant to remove that penalty for not tearing down Memorial. I mean, we could move to a contractual obligation instead of a financial one. The contractual one could be that they put up a performance bond, or there's a clause in our agreement that calls for liquidated damages. I mean, there are other ways to get the same thing done, but also to free up the cash. And I'll tell you, that's on the list. That's on the list we're discussing with Spawn right now.
Also, the psych unit, there was the contractor is there now. I mean, they contract with Spawn, right? So,
Yes.
So Spawn really has an agreement with them. They can terminate that anytime they want to.
Yes.
So, but Spawn was committed back then to make sure they take care of any indigent care beds that were there, right?
Yes, and they were still under that obligation.
Right. But if, say there's 15 beds that are taken up right now, and only 2 are indigent care, so that means Spawn's only responsible for 2 if it closes down.
In terms of our contract, and that's what I was kind of mentioning when, with Commissioner Vaughn's question, is let's just say there's 20 beds there and 2 of them are indigent, occupied by indigent patients, the rest of them are occupied by insured patients or uninsured. That's a choice Spawn made to take on more business and do that. But if they close the unit at Memorial and relocate it somewhere else, they're still obligated to take care of our indigent. Now, if they want to turn their back on the community and say, we're not going to do any more insured patients, we're not going to do any more uninsured patients and stuff, right now, under the agreement, they can do that. And that's kind of what the judge is aiming. I mean, I see you're smiling.
I'm smiling because of the sidebar. What if I were a judge with a robe and a card, I'd say, counselor, you need to, I would have the jury disregard that comment about if they wanted to abandon the community.
Can I finish? I'm not finished yet.
And that's a bad
I
choice.
know that.
Judge. Yeah.
He was talking to me and I was responding.
So the side note to that, Riley, you have a contractor there that's been there, what, 4 years?
The Spawn's contractor now,
Yes.
as far as I know, Commissioner, they've been there since at least 4, yes.
Okay, so their plan at one time, if I recall, they were supposed to do a building so they can take over the contract, probably with you guys, I guess, because Spawn would be out of it. Because once he tears down that building, that's commitment Spawn has is to tear down that building.
Correct, Commissioner, but let me just remind you that the obligation Spawn has under the agreement is not location specific. And all they have to do is to provide psych services to our indigents somewhere in Corpus Christi. So if they choose to, put it somewhere else, that's a deal that's, as long as we don't object to it on good grounds, they can do that.
Put it in Spawn at the tower.
And I think that's a real possibility. They have a building over there that they moved out of. And I think it's a possibility they could do those psych services at Shoreline.
And now the contractor that was there now really wants to play ball, wants to really be in that business. I mean, I would think by now they would actually started having some kind of a plans, I know at one time they were building it, but then they stopped. They're in Santa Fe. So that was my understanding back then, that their plan was because they wanted to build their own building so they can provide those services to the psych unit.
Commissioner, I'm aware of those discussions and stuff, and they have had them actually for several years with Spawn. But if they came to the district, we have an exclusive arrangement with Spawn. And as I mentioned earlier, at this point, we're not ready to carve services out. So we're not ready to also get into a breach of contract issue with Spawn by entertaining going with another party to provide services. But I'm not going to tell you that that couldn't be a possibility in the future because, as I said, I think the intersections are coming faster than we
I mean,
think.
for you to do it now, I mean, once this thing's over with, at the end of the day, I mean, you could contract with that agency to provide site services.
Yeah, if there's certain releases in the SPON agreement and public policy, the board and commissioners are all in agreement that we want to go in that direction. Because any time that we move away from our agreement is going to translate to additional cost for the district. Okay, now we get SPON to pay for it, I don't know, I doubt it. But anytime we move in that direction, then as policy setters and stuff, and we're talking about obligations and stuff in the future, we need to talk about those things. I mean, it's going to be a need. I've already said that there are common needs between what the indigent need and what the community needs, so they're all kind of moving and they're all on the same road and going in the same direction. So if we start to have separate arrangements for behavioral health, in other words, we carve out the indigent part of it from our indigent care agreement, and the county wants them to take on more of a community approach or a countywide approach to mental health, that's good. I mean, all those things benefit the community. I'm just saying to you that we need to think through how that should work and that we should try to do it as best as we can the right way the first time. And also understand the financial consequences of those things because those movements don't come free.
And if say, for instance, they go ahead and take it on, so all the patients there are gonna be COVID-19 patients, right?
At Memorial, if the psych unit was to move out, then the only patients at Memorial would be COVID. That's correct.
So that's the one that, the provider we have to deal with they're all COVID-19.
Yes.
Except for that, let me just say it's hypothetical because if the state comes in, Commissioner, they can choose to put people under investigation there. They can put their own surge there. It's
Still
used,
related to COVID-19 though.
not necessarily. They could use it for alternate care if they could decide that they want to put other patients there and put COVID in one floor in their hospital.
We spend $3 million or $4 million, and then we're gonna tear it down in 2 years. So we lose $3-4 million. Say, for instance, we don't even use it hardly.
Well, Commissioner, I don't know that you lose it. I mean, it's sort of the premium you pay for hedging against something that might happen. And that, when you boil it all down, that's what it comes down to, is you're gonna be paying, at least the district would, a $3 million premium as a hedge against some problem that could very well come to Corpus. I mean, we haven't, as the judge said earlier, we've been lucky that we haven't had a nursing home bloom, or more than one nursing home bloom. And so everything that we're looking really good right now, but we haven't had some of those things happen that have happened in other places.
You know, and I really don't mind using the tent, not in a parking lot, but we got a baseball field. They could very easily put a tent in a baseball field. It would be out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean, that's just the way I think.
Right, but there's no medical gases in a baseball field, and there's no laboratory, there's no, there's no MRI.
In New York, they did it in other states.
That's right, and they've spent $20 million doing it. In Houston at NRG facility, they spent $15 million.
Then you have the-
They've
you
spent
got some
millions and
hotels,
millions.
And you got some hotels that willing to also work with us, where we can place some people there.
Well, Commissioner, basically what the board was confronted with is the county judge came before them in her other capacity, or in both capacities, and said, we believe, she believes, whoever, that this is what's needed for the community. So she asked the board to step up. It wasn't the board's responsibility to challenge her or to question her motives or to question her data or anything. Don't get me wrong, they asked some questions and the judge provided information, but she came in her capacity, asked the district board to do something to benefit the community against a very probably legitimate potential problem. And so the board did that. And so that's kind of where we are, is they did it, but they did it with conditions. And so I described the conditions and stuff for those. And so I wouldn't describe $3 million lost, I'd describe it as a premium, but also if you're gonna get some of it back, you get half of it back for hypothetical, then we're only talking about $1 million or $1.5 million, depending on what the number is. So, the board tried to use its judgment, and they were given a condition where the judge was there, and she said, this is what we need to do, and they said, yes, ma'am, we'll work out how this thing makes sense for everybody, and so that's what they did. But they say, they're not in a position to question whether it's the right thing or not. That's not their role, that's not their duty, but we certainly own a building. We have a place that can ring 9.5 out of 10 bells to get a unit up and running. The hospitals, at least right now, we think they might be on board, but we don't know, and that's one of the conditions that has to be worked out. And if the government stepped up and they're willing to pay for part of it, our part of that premium is $1.5 million. And so, is it a glass half full? Is it a glass half empty? I don't know, and I don't know if any of us know in here, but I think that it's the right precaution. And like I said, $3 million in hospital dollars. I know it's a lot of money, but in healthcare, it's not a lot of money.
That's the way I feel about drainage.
Me too.
So, I just want to put it clear as to where this whole thing is coming from and where we've been, in the contract, the agreements, I don't know that, you said it's not a lot of money, but I think it's a lot of money.
It is.
The judges, hard, she's got a big heart, and she wants to do everything that we can do, and I appreciate that, Judge, and not that I'm against you or anything.
I don't take it
You know,
wrong at all.
I just want to make sure for myself and that we're doing the right thing here, and I know, to me, the hardest thing I see here, Johnny, and you've been there when we first started, you've been there, you've been in front of those crowds. The first thing we do when we spend $3 million to upgrade that building, we're gonna hear a lot more complaints. You know that. Because we promised them something, right?
Yeah, Commissioner,
Hold on. And once we build that building, and then we're gonna tear it down in 2 years, and it's gonna, they're not worried about the medical stuff, they're not worried about, all they're gonna say is, man, you just threw away $3 million, or $4 million. And then I'll probably get some phone calls myself and say, hey, why did you do this? You told us you weren't gonna build nothing there.
Well, we're not building anything there. I think there's some misconceptions, and I do want to have Johnny at least address this, but you're not building anything. It exists. It exists already. It's actually quite impressive how well it exists. I mean, we had amazing video that we provided the hospital district board. We had engineers who had looked at it. Again, when we gave them the $3 million, that is actually $1 million more than the actual bid came in. But we wanted to make sure that there was a huge contingency. But most of that money, $1.4 million of it, is a negative pressure system that helps with the contagion that's there. We're not building anything. We're improving what's there in order to deal with this type of virus. And again, the state of Texas is making these decisions all over Texas. We're just been asked to be one of these regions that takes a look at their region, because we're not in a vacuum here. We're not on an island. We're part of a huge healthcare system that our community takes that burden, and it's a huge burden, but it's in that vein. It's the same reason you buy an insurance policy. You hope you never have to use it. You may not like the cumulative effect at the end of the year, but it was worth it, because if you get into that situation, you don't have to go backwards where your health care has to stop doing elective surgeries. Let me just tell you something. They're losing $10 million a month. $10 million a week. Okay, they are losing millions of dollars by not doing elective surgeries across the board. Not to mention the human toll of not getting your surgeries done. So this is an alternate care site. Literally, the words are perfect. We're going to put care there whenever it is deemed convenient because of COVID. COVID is so highly contagious that we don't want to infect our hospitals. But know this, your 3 hospitals are ready for COVID. They've already been treating COVID. Driscoll hasn't had a patient yet, but they've been testing, but they've had some experience, let's just say, with COVID-like symptoms there. But HCA and Christus have treated COVID-19 patients. I don't want anyone to leave here thinking that we don't have a place to treat people. We do. We have negative pressure rooms. We monitor how many we have every day, to be honest with you. We have stats that we monitor every bed, every ventilator, every negative pressure room, every day. I get the stats twice a day. What we know is that we could get into a situation where you would have a cluster in the region, and this unit would be used for a variety of purposes. It could be that it's dedicated to COVID. It could be that it's dedicated to moving people out of a floor of Christus that needs to be cared for.
Of a transitional.
A transitional. There's so many reasons that you could do it, but I promise you, everything was looked at and vetted by people who it's their business to understand trauma, and that's CBRAC. We would not have come to Memorial if there was another place that was better. We would not have come to them if the state's arms in trauma had not said, please advance this. And so I think that's important to note. And the price tag is small compared to what is being lost at our hospitals every week because we've had to shut down on elective surgeries. And now that we're going back up, this gives us the opportunity to have a place. It's an insurance policy, and you're right, if you knock it all down, but I've already mentioned once, I'll re-mention it again, we're going to look at everything if this goes forward, because you'll be able to say, if we can find shelf life for 5 or 10 years, you can take that $2 million that you spent on it and extrapolate over time. Well, we were able to have our own HVAC unit. We were able to have our updated water pipes, our updated electrical. So it's 3 things that the money is going to be spent on: electrical, plumbing, HVAC. To some extent, there's some money in infection control that has to do with ceiling tiles and floor. But the most of the money is in that MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. And I do not think that you're going to get in the $4 million range, because the $3 million already presumes a much greater contingency that was originally looked at. But again, there's always possibilities. But make no mistake, we are spending, and every county that has a COVID over 100 cases, like we are in our region, we have 121. We don't talk about Nueces. We talk about regions. Why? Because we're the health center for the region. Anybody that has over 100 cases has had this discussion of where we're going to have people if we get a nursing home or some sort of vulnerable population cluster. It's happened in Victoria, it's happened in Cameron, it's happened in Webb. Now, for those of you that don't know those words and can't figure it out, that's Victoria County is Victoria, Webb is Laredo, and Cameron's Brownsville, okay? So in the map, we're here, and literally draw a circle all around you, 200-mile radius, okay? Really 150 for Laredo and for Victoria, maybe a little further for Brownsville. Everybody around us has had major issues and problems. This is why the region's trauma facility needs to make certain that there's opportunities. If the hospital district could not advance funds, that would be one thing. The concept is they have the funds to advance, and that we believe, and the state believes, there's a strong mechanism to get funds back. This is no different than in Harvey, where we advanced lots of funds in a disaster, and we had to apply for that reimbursement. And this is why it's a gift that the hospital district has been so, strong in their concept of, we need to keep these funds because we don't know what the future holds. Now we're here, and they have the funds with no debt and an ability to get reimbursed to a large extent if they were to go forward, and there's still a if. That would be a good thing.
Just can I go ask you a question? Just go back, you said 5, maybe use it for 5 years. If we use it for 5 years, and Spahn demolishes everything else except that building,
Yes.
well, they're responsible to come demolish that building back after it?
Right now,
Or is it
Commissioner,
our responsibility?
the obligation to demolish is global, and they're responsible for taking it down. Certainly, I think if we went back to them and said, well, we don't want to demolish all of it, we want to keep this one, but if you keep the 2-story building, like I said a while ago, is all those buildings are built on one set of infrastructure, and that part is the newest construction, and it relies on the infrastructure of all the old buildings just like the rest of them. So If you wanted to keep the two-story building up, then what you're gonna have to do is bring in its own electrical supply, its own water supply, its own heating ventilation system. I mean, everything that it depends on from the mothership, it's gonna have to have on its own. And so, Commissioner, I was gonna say that, when we negotiated our agreements in 2012, no one contemplated COVID. No one thought this was coming, and no one thought that there would be a need for this kind of thing in the community. The other thing I just want to lastly, Judge, unless y'all have some more questions, is to underscore the fact that all we're doing is spending money to make that part of the building operational again. We're not pouring any new concrete pillars. We're not adding new bricks. We're not putting on a new roof. We're not doing a new driveway, no new flower beds. I mean, none of those things. All this does is money that the district would put to work to make the unit available for benefit of the community. And so it's really, it's like buying insurance. It's, do you want to pay the extra and be covered, or, I don't know. I mean,
Okay, you mentioned something a while ago, and I'm sorry to bring it back up again, but you said we said 5 years, and they said that they have to tear everything down at one point, right? Because the building goes with the mother building, right?
well, the obligation to tear it down, they have to do it before 2023.
Right. So if we're gonna keep that building for 5 years, I mean, we have to keep the whole building for 5 years.
No,
The whole memorial.
it could be severed, it could be severed.
But he just said if we severed it, and you gotta completely restructure it.
Well, if you tear down the east and west buildings, those are the two tallest towers there, and leave the two-story building there, it will be devoid of electricity, water, air conditioning. I mean, it'll be a building, okay, but it won't have all the infrastructure in it that it needs to operate.
We asked the hospital district to make this decision without thinking about whether it could have a future use. And they made that decision. However, I'm letting you know that they heard from Jerry Kramer, the architect, that he would help provide analysis if we went forward to find a way to find usefulness for the building. I know it sounds like a major, discussion, engineering discussion, but why don't we just table that, because they made that decision without regard for the future. But we did not. We did not. We actually asked the engineers and the architects if we wanted to use it and repurpose it for the future, could we? Because by contract, you can do anything. You can say to the demo guy, demo up to here, sever the buildings, and escrow that amount of money that would be required for demo. Spawn would say, I put X amount of dollars in another escrow, and then when you're done with that building, this is the dollars that are there for that escrow. We have contemplated everything that you've brought up, and there is an answer for all of it. But again, the decision had to be made not in hypotheticals, and I think it's a super nice compliment that you think I have a big heart. I'd like to think I do too, but what I'm more proud of is that I'm a practical planner, that I have a decision-making ability to plan for the future as an emergency manager. That really was acquired, not natural. That's something they teach you when you become a county judge, and then I guess I've now had, 8 weeks of on-the-job training. But there's no doubt that it's the planning that's the most important. But you all made that, just not you, because you're not even a vote. You don't even get a vote. Everything that Johnny's coming to tell you is what he believes he heard as a director. He does not vote. He's like a executive director of this particular entity, but it's the board that made that decision. But they went into it consciously knowing that they may not be able to use it for the future. Is that correct?
That's correct, Judge. I mean, the issues that were behind the decision to tear down Memorial are still the issues.
Correct.
And they are that the building is beyond its useful life. And I think we're on borrowed time, maybe not in this part of the unit, but we're on borrowed time in the infrastructure that it depends on. And so we're on borrowed time. I think that the board would certainly be amenable to listening and thinking through, are there other things we can do and stuff? And it could be that you make a good point, Commissioner, and kind of dividing out, well, the new building versus the old one. And I think the new building, like I said, that's the newest section of the hospital. It was the last bond issue that was done in the 80s. It was a bond that with the assistance of Commissioners Court, the district refinanced and got paid off. But if you see the video tour of this, you would think it wasn't that old. I mean, and you look at it, it's been maintained, it's in good shape, in terms of its physical appearance and stuff. And so those could offer opportunities for discussions, but those were not factors in the board's decision.
Judge, can I ask just a couple things? You're good? Thank you. Johnny, I want you to go back and, I'm really bothered about one thing you said, and I want you to go back and watch the tape, because I am too. Because it's been so long now since you said it, I'm not sure exactly how you said it, but I kept hearing you say it's not their role or duty to question. And if I heard what you said right, I'm deeply offended that you would say that, because that board should question every proposal that comes before them, especially one that charges them to spend $3 million of taxpayer dollars. So I'm going to go back and watch that.
I think he said their
Hold
motives.
on, Judge, hold on.
I know, but you're really starting down a line here that's very dangerous for Johnny.
Okay, but I'm just making a comment. I'm not asking him a question. So I'm asking you to go back and watch that, because I'm going to, because if you implied that just because the county judge or a county commissioner or somebody else came forward with a proposal, I think what I heard you say, and I could be wrong, and I'm going to go watch it, it's not their role or duty to question the data and her motives and the deal and blah, blah, blah. If that's what you said, I would completely and wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think anybody that brings a proposal, whether it's the judge, the governor, the king of, whoever, that board should question everything, and I think they will, and I think they do, and I hope that's not what you said, because if it is, I'm really bothered by that. So that's my comment. So I'm not, if you want to clear that up, you can, but that's just my comment. That really struck me. I wasn't even going to say anything because we've been here so long on this anyway. My question I sent to Laura earlier was, I don't know what role this Commissioner's Court is even supposed to play in this process. I wasn't here the first time. If I, as a county commissioner, can go over and make a proposal to the hospital district board, and I get that she did it as her role in EOC, and that's fine. I just want to know what we're supposed to do here, because I'm getting blasted by everybody out there who thinks this is a bad idea, and there are things who thinks it's a good idea, and I keep saying, I don't even know what's going on with this. I don't know what this is until I went to that meeting, and now I'm learning today. And I don't think we have a role in it, or so I've been told, but I just need to know. If we're supposed to eventually vote on this, then I got a lot more homework to do. If this is something that the hospital district's going to do, whether we like it or not, and we may or we may not like it, I'm not saying we do or we don't, then I don't want to spend any more time on it. We got 100 other things that we've got to deal with in this county, and if there's nothing we can do about this, then I don't want to talk about it anymore. I mean, because I don't have time to do stuff that I don't have any say in. Now, if at the end of the day we have to do something, then I need to know that too, because I still may weigh in eventually and say whether I like it or don't like it, because it's related to us. But people don't understand that. I mean, I get questions, aren't y'all funding the Nueces County Hospital District? No, we don't fund them. They're a taxing entity. They set their rate, we accept their rate. That's really all we do. We appoint the board members, but I don't call those board members and say, do this or do that. They're supposed to do their own thing. So if you could go back and provide us all some information on that, because I am truly still confused on my role in this and the Commissioner's Court's role in this. So that would be very much appreciated. The state participation part, I don't understand that, so if you could, I know you've talked about it, but are you saying the state has to sign off on this, or the state has to agree to some role before this would go forward? That was one of the conditions?
Commissioner, I'd probably let the judge talk about that, because we all carry different balls in this thing, and the ball she was carrying was to work with the state to see what we could do to get funded. So I'm not quite sure of the mechanics of how all that works, because she's the one who is working closest with them in terms of that.
Okay, so maybe that can be in part of this. I mean, if the county has to go forward as a county to ask the state to do something, then I would think the Commissioner's Court would be involved. If the judge thinks she can do it, and I'm not saying this really at all or passive aggressive, if she believes or if the law says that she can do it without us, then tell me that. I just need, that's all I'm trying to ask, because I'm really confused by this. I'm still just a little bothered about what I think Johnny said, so I'm a little worked up, so I'm trying not to get worked up on that. But if you could include that in the analysis so that we can just kind of move through that today, because I truly, I don't know. I just remember when the Commissioner Gonzalez was involved, something got voted on here. I wasn't on the court. I remember sitting in here because I was running at the time to be on the court, and I remember the vote, but I don't remember all of it. So I thought when this started, and I may be wrong, that we were going to have some role and some say and some vote. If we don't, fine, I move on and I'm done. So that's really.
Today, all you have is an update.
No, I know today.
So I will
Right.
make sure that I'll provide.
But you can answer the question.
If you know the answer, sure.
Basically, really, her role is under the emergency powers. In terms of her working with the state, I'm not sure which department she was working for, with, not for, with, in terms of a site for COVID patients. She can answer that part, but she can, I mean, her role, flows from the governor's authority. And basically, there's a lot of things that she can do under the emergency powers. And this is one of the controls, I believe, that could be used for purposes of this disaster, but I don't know what agency it is that she's been working with. I know that there's EDM, and then there's the state health authority.
Right.
And, the local health authority, the state health authority, so it may have been from the state.
Yeah.
Health authority, so she can answer.
Right, and Johnny wants to respond because he made that motion, to me that he would like to respond.
Commissioner, I did say that, but I also followed it with the comments that the board asked questions. The judge provided information ahead of time. They asked several questions, and the hospital district board in the past, and this one most recently, have a history of working with commissioners and doing things that they ask them to do. We did that as recently as yesterday with a request Commissioner Gonzalez had for some funding for storing a trailer and making supplies available and some other things.
But
And so
what you
we,
said was, it's not their role or duty to question. That's the part that bothered me. If
They're-
Commissioner Gonzalez comes over with a great proposal, or me, or Carolyn, or John, or anybody, I would expect him to ask me questions, and I would expect him to challenge me and say, how does this fit under the mode, and so forth and so on. So I would expect them to question anybody and not just do it because we ask. That's nice. I appreciate the working relationship that we've always had, because, but the ask may be different. Like, let's say that, let's take this example out. Let's say I didn't like Commissioner Gonzalez's plan. Don't even know what it is, so I'm just using this example. I mean, how do you rectify that without them, if I liked it and he didn't, or if I liked it and Carolyn did it, I would think they would ask questions and so forth and so on. And when you're spending $3 million of taxpayer money, even if it's in the best interest and a great project and it's the judge asking, I would hope the heck that they would challenge and question everything in that.
and they did,
And,
Commissioner.
and they did, and they did, and they should, and I agree, and I think all I'm saying is that whatever somebody comes and opines doesn't necessarily make it true. If he said something that makes you believe that a board isn't independent, let me just clear up the issue right now. I came there, nobody had any understanding of what I was going to say except for Johnny himself, who was briefed by our EOC team the day before. That's 1 hour before I got the briefing from the engineers. I briefed Johnny and the chairman, as is the proper protocol.
But hold on, Judge, hold on. I'm not questioning what you think.
No, I know, I just want to make sure.
No, you don't need to, in all due respect, I didn't like what Johnny said. I didn't say I didn't like what you said, because I would tell you if I didn't like what you said, but his opinion matters. He's the guy that comes over here and represents what the board is doing and saying, and if he comes over and says it's not their duty to question or not their role to question, that scares me that the director.
I think it came out wrong, but I don't think that's what he meant.
Reiterated it. I mean, he just reiterated it again. I kind of gave him a softball, and he came back and said, I did say that, but they asked questions. So it does bother me that he said that, and it bothers me that that's his opinion, if that's his opinion, because I don't share that opinion in any way, shape, or form based on what he said. But again, I'm going to go back and watch the film and the tape and make sure that he said the way I said. So that's bothersome to me. That just,
Yeah.
and I get that you have a different impression, and so that's why I wasn't challenging your statements, Judge. I was challenging
Yeah.
Johnny's because.
No, I know. I just
mean,
wanted to make
I don't
sure.
think that's your perspective. I don't, and it sure wasn't mine before you said it. So anyway, we've been here a long time. I don't want to keep this going, so I'm done on this for now until I get that opinion. I don't know how to weigh in right now.
Well, I understand, and I'm going to tell you, I went to make a presentation in my capacity as emergency manager, and I
You
did
made that
so.
clear. You made that
Yeah,
very
and I
clear.
think that's been on the record, and I also did so with the consent of not only our section district director, Gary Barney, but that's with TDEM, the Texas Department of Emergency Management, but I also had a conversation with Hillary Watt, who's the director of Region 20 CBRAC, and together, all of us, including the EOC from the city. I also make sure that I had a briefing of Senator Colhorst, who is not only our senator, but she's the chair of health in the Senate. I did so with all our entire legislative delegation, with Congressman Cloud. I took every protocol and made certain in my emergency management chain that we discussed it thoroughly, that we vetted it thoroughly, and I made a presentation like I have done on so many other occasions for other matters that were equally important. They were just not COVID related. And I'm going to let Laura get back to you, but I'm going to tell you that this court does not have standing to make any decision because they do not own the building that the state through CBRAC and EOC is making the request. We are not, as a county, tenants of the building, and we are not stakeholders in providing any services for that building. So there is absolutely nothing except for this awesome input and workshop that we've been conducting that you can do, and you can continue to provide input, ask questions, get involved, keep asking, more info of the hospital district, of myself, of TDEM and emergency management. That's all of our duties as public servants. But if you're asking what your role is to vote on, the answer is there's nothing to vote on in this court because we do not have a stakehold in the property or the tenancy or in services. And so therefore, I went to the proper jurisdiction, the hospital district, to make the request.
But then, Judge, I'm sorry, I'm gotta follow up. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on this, but I'm so bothered
Okay.
by it. So, Johnny, do you tell your board members that this is your opinion, that they shouldn't question, and I think it's not their role or duty to question? Do you tell them, is that what they believe, that if the judge comes over, or Carolyn comes over, or Joe comes over, that they shouldn't question the proposals that are made? Is that what you've advised them?
No, Commissioner. Let me go back and just add to that and maybe retract it or clarify it or whatever.
Because you haven't told, you
judge-
don't tell them not to get involved in the details and let the lawyers do it. You let them make independent decisions, and they can question if they want. This is just your opinion and not what you espouse as your opinion to the board.
I'm not an appointed official, and also our board is appointed and not elected. I just want to draw the distinction. But the judge came to the board in her role as the emergency management coordinator for the county.
Right, I get that, but I'm saying, do you tell them what you just said? Do you tell them, let the lawyers do it, don't ask questions, don't get involved in the details, don't question, like you were saying?
Of course not.
Okay, I'm making sure, so that as long as those board members don't feel like they can't question, because I would love, and I know the judge would too, I love the intellectual stimulation. I love my deals to be challenged. I would, if I walked over there with something, I would want them to ask me 100 questions if they've got them, and not for them to think they couldn't or shouldn't. And I just want to make sure that that's the case. So I think you.
If they don't, they shouldn't be on the board.
Well, I agree. So
59, one of mine, they said no.
I was going to say, I think all of those people are tremendous,
I do too.
thought-provoking individuals. And just so you know, from those that were on the phone, because there was social distancing involved, to those that were in the present, they asked great questions. And they'll continue, I'm certain, to ask great questions. And I'm glad you cleared that up. But sometimes we can misinterpret what people say and make it, have a different effect. And I think that's not the case. I don't believe that Johnny thinks that I'm wielding any magic wand. I went over there as an advocate. I've done so on many occasions. And just so you know, I've done it with multiple boards, not just this board, but previous boards. And I know for a fact when I went to the previous board and asked for Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, to be a part of our behavioral health care program, nobody thought they couldn't ask any questions, and nobody thought they had to do what I said, and nobody thought any of that. That's just not even in the realm, and I don't think, Johnny, you believe that either.
Judge, I don't, and I just want to clarify again, the board was reacting to dealing with you in your capacity as emergency coordinator. They did ask questions, you provided a lot of information. I believe that they did their due diligence in making the decision they did, and so anything I said that said that they should disrespect her or just go along with what you said, that was not their practice.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, thank you, Johnny. Appreciate that. Commissioners, would it be all right if we let Mr. Hip have a seat now? Commissioner Modis, do you have anything for him?
No, I'll follow up with Johnny on some of the stuff.
I mean, you're welcome to, Commissioner.
I don't think we'd have the time, Judge. I mean, we're still in workshop, and we haven't even got to a regular agenda.
know.
But I wish we would've separated this. I mean, this is a whole issue that, I mean, could go hours and obviously
Yes.
days. You know, I want to make sure that, you know, I understand in separating, the dangers of separating services. I know it's not directed, but I think it is directed in the overall decision that's been making. I understand when it's been explained that that the board has their own oversight, right? Not everything comes to us. I do believe that there's some funding questions that do come to us, but in looking at the psych part of this whole plan and maybe what may happen or may not happen with SPAWN, I think we need to take any middleman out of the process and go, you know, directly. You know, psych service is so important, and I think complements what we as a court have approved and supported in the past, and very well that could be part of what could be a result of building up this one section of the hospital. So I think that we need to be able to keep that service and make sure that we protect it. I think there's, you know, contract in place that we can try to operate that independently rather than going through SPAWN to do it. So I want to share that with you. You know, just hearing everybody, we all have excellent points. I mean, I do see the concern in spending that much money, but it was a board that decided. I do feel and believe that we should have some more say, and that it should be directed on the agenda for us to have more discussion on that. We have 30 minutes, according to Johnny earlier, that we'll know whether or not somebody has put in or not to be a provider for this building. And if they don't, I guess it's a moot point then, all of this that has happened. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, I'm looking at my email right now, Commissioner, and I don't see a response from anyone yet.
So then walk us through that process if we don't have anything happen by 5 o'clock.
Well, I believe that we probably will hear from them. It may not be the deadline, but if they don't meet the deadline, we're going to leave it open for a few more days, honestly, to see what they have, because I think they may come back with some different suggestions, maybe a better idea, maybe different thoughts. But I think what the board wanted to do was to leave this open there if the providers want to take advantage of it. And so did we give them 48 hours? Yes, but we wanted to stimulate the conversation. And I think the judge can attest that those conversations are going on right now. I do expect a letter from SPAWN for sure. The other ones I think will be delayed, but that's okay. I mean, we'll work through that. We'd like to get this thing going as quickly as we can, but if they don't respond by 5, I wouldn't say this is off the table.
Well, this issue, it's just a very interesting dynamic. People, I guess, that would want to or try to categorize this as DRR or conservative or a progressive approach to it. I've seen people on both sides of the political spectrum that have argued for or against the benefits or disadvantages of this plan that's been laid out by the hospital board. I've seen hardcore conservatives who have said, you know what? We do need to have a separate facility because we should not have these patients in a hospital that could potentially impact the care that's provided in those hospitals. You know, and then you have people that argue the difference, that said, no, the money, the cost is too much with the threat, with the possibility of not being able to recoup it. And so for me, that's just, from my opinion now, before we have something that comes before us, if we do have any vote on it, would be, you know, if there's a possibility at being reimbursed, then and this is a facility that's there that can be put up, then I think that makes sense. We have to make sure that that's a guarantee. I would hate to see any tax dollars to be put out, because we could say it's not ours, but it is collectively all of ours that we put into, every property owner puts into that. It's a line item there on our property value, right, our property appraisal. So as a taxpayer, I'm concerned about that. But I do see a benefit in wanting to separate that. I hope with the actions and the talk that we've given today, the interaction we've had with the public, that this is flattening and we don't have to have any need. And perhaps this little bit of delay or stretching out, maybe perhaps the deadline of hearing from possible providers, maybe it gives us a little bit more leeway as we see the governor move forward, as we see hopefully fewer cases being reduced here in our area. Maybe there may not be a need and we don't have to cross that threshold to build up something that may not be needed. But in the meantime, I do think that we need to have all options available for us to have a facility that we can put patients there. Now, if the numbers don't warrant, well, that's another part of the argument. But I don't, we all have our opinions. We all have seen the process play out from Friday, have been given your presentation today. So I will just say, let's continue to move forward. Let's have this on another agenda so we can discuss further. But like I said, something that's a big sticking point to me that's part of this whole collateral approach is the psych services. I want that protected. I want that to be able to have a level of care that is important and provides dignity to people who need it from this county. And I believe that the contract, the way we have it now, is an excellent way to do that. And I think if we let Spawn or anyone else, it's not about Spawn, but obviously they have to look at their bottom line as well, that to me is a concern that services could be provided, but at what level compared to what we have now? That would be my concern. So, thank you, Judge.
Thank you so much. Good comments. Okay, Johnny, I think we're going to let you go. I don't know if you ever ate, but I sure hope that the next time we...
Stole a cookie out of your office.
All right, well, the next time we make you come over for the whole day, please feed Johnny Hip, and thank you, appreciate that. So I'm going to try to make some executive decisions here to try to get us moving. What I'd like to do is, even if you have further conversations, and I know we probably want to, I'm going to move on. We've talked about, just for the public, the workshop was supposed to be discussing testing. We got through that. Treatment, we had some good opportunity to talk about treatment. Hospitalization options, we talked about that. And area economic recovery. We did pretty good for 8 hours, but we didn't quite get to the reports that I really wanted to for EOC and Melissa, only because those folks live here in this building. Let me work with Tyner and the commissioner's schedule, and let's get that back on super quick. I can't tell you as I sit here when, but I got the thumbs up. I just want you to know, commissioners, that in your inbox, you're gonna know and that we have a daily burn rate. That's equivalent to how much money we're spending, and you're gonna see it every day, and you're also gonna see it cumulatively. Dale will make that a point, I hope, to brief us shortly. But just want you to know that Melissa was going to talk about how all that comes to play, what the checks and balances are. You're going to get it if you'll just let me work with Tyner, and please make yourself flexible, and we'll get that to you. I mean, I'm ready anytime, but let's see what everyone's schedule allows, where we just talk about the ride-out team, the reports they do daily, the documents that you can look at no matter who you are. You know, I mean, in the sense of, am I in the room or am I not in the room? Want to make sure you get those. Want to make sure that you know what's going on weekly in EOC. The way to do that is to look at those reports. So Melissa, we will get you back on that agenda. If I move on, Edward, I'm just curious, is there anybody here that came for public comment? I almost feel like the answer is yes. Yes, and that's what we thought. And so we've got him here. I'm going to tell you that normally I would never do this to you. We're going to use a time limit today, but I'm going to promise you that we're going to get this next meeting scheduled within 72 hours that I'm talking about. And if you have more to say and I've cut you off, then we're gonna let you, you know, come back and have as much time as you need to. But Dr. Praderio, please, we welcome you. And we talk about frontline people. Dr. Praderio has been providing the psychiatric services for our community for years and years, and I don't know where we would be without his guidance on behavioral health. So please, we welcome you.
Thank you, Your
And just
Honor.
remember that we're not going to talk back at this point. We're just going to receive the information. It doesn't mean anything, Doctor. It just means we're in public comment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me this time. And I am sorry, I apologize. The day was long, and on the middle of the day, I left and see some patients and come back. I am a psychiatrist, geriatric psychiatry, working for 26 years in Corpus Christi. I am the Chief Medical Officer of CIBH, Care Integrated Behavioral Health, a company that has been managing psychiatric service for Christos for the last 4 years successfully. A company who attempt in any way to knock in all of the possible doors to develop more sufficient, appropriate psychiatric care for this community, including using our own dollars to build a hospital, and from the point in dividing and trying to calculate the necessity of this community. And I am very appreciative. Number one, when Judge Canale arrived to her position, we all caring for psychiatric chronic mentally ill patients, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel because she expressed herself publicly and how important is the health of your community. And we saw this, and especially this is always left behind. Suddenly we will have the opportunity, and we approach her. We went to the hospital district. I contact any door or every door this is available. And in general, the tunnel is still there and the light is dissipating. We believe in Judge Canale, but we has been having some bump on the road. Last Friday, I received an email from Cristo just terminating the contract with CIBH, the service that we are providing at the location of Memoria. In addition to this, when I request, the community knock my door, not because I am a specialist, because I am old in here. In 26 years of seeing my face, they are asking me what is for us. My patients on the unit ask me what is for them on the future. My daughter is a physician that I brought to this city because I am proud of this city. And she asked me what is the future for psychiatric. I have grandkids. I teach in two university, and it's paradoxical to teach my student and resident the culture of care for community and the value of respecting an specialty that is based, the pure pathology of psychiatry is abandonment, darkness, separation, no caring for. It is exactly what we are going to do, exacerbating pathology. I work nationally in developing protocol because post-pandemia, behavioral medicine is going to be one of the most important interventions to repair the community. And what I receive is no answer. I asked Mr. Heap, what is the answer for Christos going to respond? What Christos is providing? I'm working with Christos for 26 years and they don't have a click for behavioral medicine. Therefore, I am expecting this. Maybe they don't have a click for this future. But I can tell you what this city needs. And it's for me not comprehensible at this age in my life, as I face officials with the power to resolve in front of a private provider wanting to be the most serious component of the solution and not having a solution. I'm sorry. I am frustrated. I am lost. I don't know where we go from here. I assure you, as I spent 26 years treating indigent, homeless, Nueces County's car patients. And the thing that's hurt me here on the heart, because it's my super specialty, I am a geriatric psychiatry. I ran for 23 years a geriatric psychiatric unit in this town, the only one south of San Antonio. How I will face an elderly driving 200 miles to receive service? How I am talking to families? I cover 72 nursing homes in South Texas with my service. At the time that nationally, we believe that we have to be very prepared for post-pandemia. Locally, I feel regress. I feel frozen on the past, and I am not pointing finger. I am not looking for faulty. I said before, just Canale was like, wow, appear that the sun is coming. But honestly, I need more than that. We need more than that. The community of Corpus Christi need more than that. They want to brush us with 10 or 12 beds. This is the contract of the hospital district. And when we approach hospital district to say, what is the plan? They say, we contract with Corpus. Like if I am an owner and I have a vendor, I am not going to check my vendor and having answer for what they are going to do. But anyway, I don't know where we're going from here. Thank you, Your Honor. Any question about this community? I have been meeting with Medal Foundation nationally, locally. I have been picking up Paul Lavaca, who died with similar situation. Victoria 10 years ago was decapitated by lack of intervention. I admit those patients. And you know, we can do better. Honestly, if any one of you sit with me, in 10 minutes we can have the solution for behavioral medicine. And Judge Canale know that.
I do. I'm not supposed to say anything, but
Therefore, I don't understand. And I am not giving up. I might be without job in a few months because they notify me termination of a contract, but doesn't mean that I am leaving. I am happy here. Thank you very much.
thank you so much. I'm going to call, Maggie, did you check on the other person? Just so you know, I want people to know, there were people signed up, but they already spoke in workshop. I'm going to announce their names so that you feel comfortable that I took care of everybody for public comment. So after Dr. Praderio, it's James Klein, Jim Klein, he's out in the hallway. But we already addressed Pastor David Bendit, Glenn Holland, Margaret Fratilla left, and Dr. Papanini. So there were multiple people, but we've already gone through them. It's just Jim, and then what about Javier Gonzalez? Is he here or is he on deck? He left. Okay.
He said he'd come back later.
Okay, so then it's just Jim, and then after that, we will, and Jim, you'll know public comment is just your time to visit, and we will not be visiting back. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Judge Canales and Mr. Commissioners. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. My name is James Klein. I go by Jim. I'm a professor of history here at a local college here in Corpus Christi. I'm also a member of the Nueces County Historical Commission. I'm speaking to you today. I saw on your agenda further down that you're going to be discussing architectural services and engineering services for the 1914 Nueces County Courthouse. I would just like to echo some of the comments that I made last month at the March meeting of the County Commissioners Court, urging the Nueces County Commissioners Court to pursue recommendations that I mentioned, as I said at the last meeting, including contract for preparation of a current structural assessment, that Nueces County contract for services to conduct a comprehensive structural evaluation and prepare for the report with recommended repairs, and also then as well to improve the RFP document process and availability, that Nueces County revise the RFP to clarify expectations and parameters for proposals for redevelopment, And as I mentioned before as well, the 1914 courthouse, I believe, is a physical manifestation of the coastal Bend's population's resiliency. It continues to stand despite being battered by the 1916 hurricane, the 1919 hurricane, the 1933 hurricane, Hurricane Beulah, and Hurricane Celia. I appeal to you again as a historian seeking to preserve our past, but also as a resident of Nueces County concerned about its current and future economic well-being. Historical heritage tourism can add significantly to the economic development of a community. Heritage tourists spend considerable sums of money in communities they visit as they extend their stay beyond that of other tourists. I ask you to bear in mind these sentiments as you consider the RFQs for Preservation Architect Services and Engineering Services later today. Thank you for your time and consideration of my remarks and for your service to the people of Nueces County.
Thank you so much, sir. Again, that does conclude everybody that signed up that is here. And I'm going to reach out through the office for the gentleman that had to leave for the delay. Typically, when you come for public comment, you don't expect it's going to be 5 o'clock before you make your public comment. So we're going to reach out to him and let him know that we would love to have him come next time. Okay, at this time, I'm going to move to the consent agenda. And the items are listed A through O, A through letter O, and would ask at this time if there are any to be removed by any commissioners. And if not, I would entertain a motion. Tyner, are you going to table one?
G, please, Judge, we did not get a list for that item, and I just want to clean that up.
I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to table item G. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Will it be a table till next court, Tyner? Kara, I'm really not sure of the date, but I bet you got it. Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, tell me which one?
E?
E is an egg. Okay, anyone else? All right, how about a motion for A, excluding E, items A through O, excluding G and E?
So moved.
And a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Johnny stuck around so he can explain. There was a technicality on the contract that needed an amendment. Commissioner Modis.
Yeah, just want to talk a little bit more about it. I mean, this, Mr. Graham's contract has been before us a few times already, and this is the second meeting in a row that we've had his name on there because I think there had to be a separation with him and the Admiral, so.
And I think it even had to do with website, John. Ask, Johnny, what can you tell Commissioner Modis about it?
Essentially, Commissioner, the item E is a simple amendment to add to Mr. Graham's agreement for him to work on upgrading the hospital district's website. And the reason it's paid for the district, it's be paid by the hospital district. And the reason it's before you now is because we are all parties to the same agreement. It's a tri-party agreement, so we couldn't make that amendment to the agreement unilaterally. So that's why we brought it back to the court.
Do we have to do this as a trilateral agreement? I'm just curious. I'll be honest, I really would rather not keep voting on these hospital district amendments any more than I have to, because I'm frustrated, so.
You know, I can have Laura address that later with you if that's okay, just in the interest of time. She can write something to you. The answer is it's important when we're asking him to do work that we've decided to work jointly on, like our opioid task force. And, you know, I think it's a good idea that you know about it if you, let me let Laura address it with you.
And Judge, while she's waiting to come up.
That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm fine.
Is that okay?
Thomas Graham's group is already doing work on the website for the opioid task force. Much of the work that they do between the two of them is the same as will need to be done on the hospital district. And so we went ahead and moved. They honestly should have been in the original agreement, but there's some question about whether we could move forward with them at that time, and so we're adding them in.
This is for more money too, I thought, right? Didn't I see it?
Yes, that's correct.
So this is to do hospital district website, where the previous was everything having to do with the opioid task force and getting their work done. Is that correct?
And Commissioner, I'm not a website person, but our website was done many years ago, and it's what they describe as sort of a public-facing or forward-facing website. And the intention is to do work on the website so that it can go both ways, much like the county's website where you can get on there, file an application for the indigent care program. I mean, there's a lot of things that are gonna be done with the website that are not there now.
And in fact, one of the things that came up from the Be Healthily report was how important it was for indigent health care to have stronger access through the website because it was sometimes hard to navigate. So that was one of the things that came out of our assessment, is that we need to do a better job of making it more user-friendly in English and in Spanish. And so that was one thing that, that you guys, I know, wanted to address.
There are a lot of advocates who do work for the indigent and trying to get them set up for programs and stuff. And so it's not just the indigents, but the people who work on
That's
their
true.
behalf as well.
Will this allow for, or do you, I haven't even checked myself, can you even access meetings? I mean, do y'all record or broadcast your meetings live like the way we do, or?
Yes, you can access the minutes. We also put up the audios.
But
Of
just
the minute.
audio, no video like this?
No, because we don't do video meetings yet. We're working on that.
I mean, if we're already paying him, he's already gonna be elbow deep in all of that.
Yeah, you could open up a
I mean,
portal.
because I know there was a lot of helpful information that
Oh, I
was
see what you're saying.
that was covered on Friday's meeting, on y'all's emergency meeting. And I was just not able to physically make it there, but it would have been nice to be able just to pull it up and look at it live or later on demand. And I mean, if you're gonna be doing that, I
Yeah,
think
I
that,
think it's
I mean,
gonna be
every level of government now, especially because of COVID, are broadcasting on some sort of social media platform at least. And so I just think that that's something to look at.
Maybe you could.
That's
ask-
part of the goal.
Okay. All right, so can I get a motion for that amendment? And again, that's for this agreement, that personal services contract to improve the website to the district?
I thought the hospital district already approved it.
They did, sir. It's an amendment because we're a tri-party to the agreement. They've already done it. We have to ratify their approval already because we're involved with it.
Paying for the whole amount?
Yes. We just have to ratify it. It's just an amendment to the original agreement. But because we were a part of the original, we need to be a part of this. Even though we didn't ask for this, the hospital district pursued this on their own. But again, it's tied to the original agreement, so we need to approve it. And that's,
Total amount is what, 139,000?
yes. So,
Commissioner, it could be up to 39,000. Depends on what level of work we do. There are several recommendations for the site, and I don't know that we're going to go with all of them.
so he needs our approval. So can I get a motion, please, to approve this amendment? And I'll do a second, and, okay, and then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye? Okay, I've got an abstention. And then, let's see. Okay,
If we can take out of order,
Yes,
five B and C.
course.
Which is really just not in executive, just in public comments.
Judge, I'd make a motion to pass that one. That one's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Sorry. I should have asked for that earlier. I'm sorry.
okay, so on 5B and C, we're just gonna table those and just for.
No table. We're gonna take action.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Approving her contract.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Basically, it's approving an order which basically says it's an exemption to the bidding process.
Okay.
It's a professional services contract, and
Okay.
then that you're giving the approval of the contract. And then the second part is basically you're giving me authority to go to the AG and get a consent of the agreement.
Got
So
it.
moved.
Okay, fine. So, I've got a motion and a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. So it's just, we've taken it out of executive for the public and putting it in the regular agenda?
Right.
Thank you so much.
Did you have any questions of Catherine Snapka,
Well,
outside counsel?
Kathy, thank you for being here all day. I think this is it's funny, right? It seems like healthcare is everything nowadays, but the idea that a lot of our users, including folks in the jail, are being charged exorbitant amounts for insulin, when we all know that just a few years ago, something that is now costing $200 was once $23, is really just driving up the cost of our healthcare and the unfunded mandates that we have already. But your plan is to pursue this vigorously and to cooperate and coordinate with others that are doing the same to get the best data. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's great. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? I would just say, keep us informed in the loop and document like crazy, because I do know that, that this is as much important to, at the national level as well it is to the state, but right down here in Nueces County, it's making a big impact in our finances at the jail.
And we certainly hope to be able to recover some of that for the county.
That's good. Okay, thank you. With no other questions, that motion passes. And so now I'm going to go back. Thank you for waiting. Go back into regular agenda item. We already did number 2. So
I think 1, 2.
and 1, 2, oh, I'm sorry, I got to go back into 1. Yes, and I'll tell you that we'll just, if it works with you, since we're going to go ahead and have an EOC meeting, if we can get it done quickly, I'll put this item back on. And that way, if there's anything that we want to discuss as it pertains to 4A1, I can put it in. We just need 72 hours to post, commissioners. Do you want anything else on there? Okay. So we're going to need to do it again, is what I'm saying. In other words, put it in,
We tabling 1?
just table 1. How about that too? I'm happy to do it on Monday. Tyner, what's our posting rules right now? It's
72
Wednesday.
hours. I can't do earliest I can do a meeting is Saturday because
No,
we're
but
on Wednesday already.
Talk about, I'm sorry.
The EOC, in other words, we didn't get to do Melissa's piece nor 4A1.
No, 4A1, I think we
Yeah, we did that.
we did.
Okay, if
Yeah,
you
we-
feel satisfied, okay.
But I don't know how the court feels. I was thinking, since Commissioner Chesney, you recommended something every agenda, and I think it may be in the format of maybe 4A1, that would be every court here on out until things change.
Sure.
And I'll make it,
Yeah.
get with the county attorney, make it a
And this
little
ti-
broad.
Yeah, and this time if we have presentations, we'll just know we have to book that on a different day.
And I don't think we will. That was we got so much today.
You're
we
right.
hadn't gotten, that's going to be.
You're right.
Caught us up, I think. I mean,
Okay,
it's gonna be-
super. Well, then, thank you, Tyner. So now I'll move on, thank you, Tyner. I'll move on to number 3, and I'm almost sorry.
Are we tabling it or not? Yeah.
No action, well, no action taken at this
Right.
time. It'll just be tabled
Or if you wanna
almost to the next meeting and the next.
Do like I
meeting.
do on mine, I can motion to table till the next meeting.
All right, go ahead and make the motion for
Mo-
her.
so
And
moved.
then- And then second, and then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, better, thank you. This is, I'm sorry that this is almost at the end of the day, because it's kind of monumental. We were not dealing with COVID. This would be the highlight, and newsreels would be here, because we're about to save money. And this was something that commissioners, you asked Dale and Michael to bring back to you at the right time, and it's the right time. Talk to us about enterprise and the leasing of our new fleet.
Okay. Commissioners and Judge, thank you. This is to discuss and consider adopting leasing options for fleet vehicle replacement and authorize the master equity lease and maintenance agreements with Enterprise Fleet Management Incorporated. I want to say it was during the budgeting process last year that the court had asked us to go and look into leasing options. We started those conversations with Dale and I and Michael Sosa, who's actually participating via WebEx meeting, and had several good discussions resulting in a presentation that Michael provided to the court in November. The court received that information well and asked us to continue looking into it, which we did. We've worked extensively with Laura and Belinda, especially in the county attorney's office, going over the agreements that are here. There's a service agreement and A through F on exhibits. These items cover the master agreement, which covers the lease in terms of rental, the maintenance agreement, which covers the vehicle maintenance, repairs, and payment terms, the maintenance agreement and fleet rental agreement, which covers the cards that they'll provide to us for each of the rental vehicles, and we'll be utilizing certain repair locations that are authorized to provide service under the Enterprise Fleet Program, which will help save the county money on repair costs. And then on the amendments, Belinda did just a stellar job of finding things that needed to be addressed, and so we included the non-appropriation clause under the Exhibit D. The Exhibit E covers the third-party repairs, and then Exhibit F creates the terms for how we will do future amendments, which would be like the actual lease of each vehicle in the program. Part of the other process that was going on while the legal documents were being reviewed is a review of the county's fleet to see which vehicles will be eligible under this program to be replaced. And what we did was we targeted the oldest vehicles in the fleet, and we reviewed those with Romeo Ramirez in our office, and we took a real good look based on age and mileage considerations, and then reviewed those needs against the budgeted funds to arrive at the number of vehicles. And under this program, we're able to actually lease 55 vehicles, which is a record number for the county to be able to acquire at one time. Typically, in the past, we've acquired somewhere around anywhere from 15 to 24 vehicles in any one given year. And so this is going to enable us to address a lot of the older fleet, which is the area that drives the most costs in terms of maintenance. And in our conversations with Dale, this is a great opportunity for the county to save money, have vehicles that are newer. They get replaced on a more frequent basis so that we don't have as old vehicles in the fleet causing those higher costs. The agenda item, if approved, would authorize Enterprise Fleet Management to execute the orders for the 55 new fleet vehicles to be leased. When the actual vehicles are received